Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Anda sedang menyaksikan Niaga AWANI bersama saya Rozman. Seperti biasa, jam ini kami akan bawakan pelbagai rangkuman berita niaga, ekonomi termasuk juga dengan pelaburan dari peringkat tempatan hinggalah ke antarabangsa. Dan bercakap mengenai pelaburan, antara perkembangan terkini dengan sejumlah 84.3% daripada projek pembuatan yang diluluskan sejak tahun 2021 telah dilaksanakan. Kita ikuti penjelasan Menteri Pelaburan, Perdagangan dan Industri Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Abdul Aziz berkenaan perkara ini.
Alhamdulillah, setakat 9 bulan pertama 2024, pelaburan diluluskan telah mencecah 254.7 bilion ringgit, peningkatan 10.7% berbanding tempoh yang sama tahun lepas. Hampir 160,000 pekerjaan baharu akan dijana daripada hampir 4,800 projek yang diluluskan. Pertumbuhan tahun ke tahun sebanyak 76% dalam penciptaan pekerjaan dan 21% dalam kelulusan projek. Saya selalu tekankan, pelaburan diluluskan walau setinggi mana sekalipun tidak bermakna jika ia gagal direalisasikan. Alhamdulillah, setakat 18 November 2024, 84.3% daripada projek pembuatan yang diluluskan sejak 2021 telah dilaksanakan. InsyaAllah, MITI akan berusaha untuk meneruskan prestasi cemerlang ini. Salah tu. Pergi tangan. Salah.
Cikgu. Ikut lah cikgu ni. Aduh.
Okay, alright. Okey, murid-murid, hari ini kita belajar pasal pelaburan diluluskan. Okey, siapa tahu apa dia pelaburan yang diluluskan?
Saya cikgu.
Okey, apa dia Farah?
Bila syarikat tu kata dia nak melabur?
Salah. Ayung?
Bila company jumpa Perdana Menteri, cikgu?
Salah. Okey, pelaburan diluluskan dikira apabila permohonan syarikat untuk melabur di Malaysia itu diluluskan oleh MIDA. Senang tak nak luluskan pelaburan? Lela?
Sebenarnya cikgu, dua company buat MOU. MOU tu hantar dekat MIDA, luluslah pelaburan.
Salah tu. Pergi tangan. Hush. Kalau setakat MOU belum lagi dianggap sebagai pelaburan yang diluluskan. Permohonan syarikat ni untuk menjalankan aktiviti perniagaan ni diluluskan di bawah Akta Penyelarasan Perindustrian tahun 1975. Jadi sekiranya syarikat ni mempunyai dana pemegang saham sekurang-kurangnya 2.5 juta ringgit ke atas, ya, atau menggaji pekerja sepenuh masa sekurang-kurangnya 75 orang ke atas. Jadi syarikat yang terlibat ni perlu mengemukakan permohonan lesen pengilang terlebih dahulu ni, lesen pengilang ni kepada MIDA, ya, kena submit butiran syarikat, butiran industri, lokasi projek, ya, dan projek yang dihasilkan, berapa tahun projek itu nak siap, kos tahunan projek dan juga butiran pemegang saham dan juga equity serta butiran-butiran yang lain lah. Ya. Kita juga dalam permohonan ini akan minta jumlah pekerja yang akan diwujudkan. Kita juga nak tahu berapa peratus pekerja terdiri daripada pengurusan, teknikal dan juga mereka yang berkemahiran tinggi. Ya. Ambil nota tu. Yalah, kita nak wujudkan pekerjaan bergaji tinggi untuk rakyat kita. Kalau semuanya nak bekerja tak mahir, dari segi jangka panjang, macam mana negara kita nak maju? Ya. Kita juga nak tahu sumber bahan mentah dan komponen yang digunakan dalam penghasilan. Keutamaan kita ialah syarikat yang menggunakan komponen yang dihasilkan dalam negara kita. Kenapa? Ya, ini kenapa? Sebab bila kilang baru ini guna komponen dari dalam negara, maka syarikat tempatan yang sedia ada ini akan dapat tingkatkan hasil mereka. Dan ada juga syarikat-syarikat baru yang diwujudkan untuk memenuhi keperluan kilang-kilang ini. Barulah ekosistem negara kita boleh berkembang. Kita pun nak tahu juga pasaran mereka. Adakah untuk ekspor, adakah untuk gunaan tempatan. Kalau gunaan ekspor, pendapatan negara kita pun naiklah. Dan syarikat juga perlu nyatakan unjuran pendapatan mereka. Satu lagi komponen penting ialah penyelidikan atau R&D. Kita nak syarikatnya datang kat Malaysia ni juga ada elemen R&D supaya dapat pembangunan untuk teknologi tempatan kita. Jadi kita boleh nampak ya, taklah semudah tu nak meluluskan pelaburan. Ya, kita penuhi semua aspek yang ditetapkan, barulah boleh dapat lesen pengilang. Ya, kalau setakat hantar MOU, confirm tak lulus. Faham kelas?
Faham, cikgu.
Itulah sebabnya bila orang peleceh data pelaburan diluluskan itu, alah ini setakat baru lulus. Ya, tandanya orang tu tak tahu. Bukan senang kita nak luluskan pelaburan-pelaburan ini. Jadi banyak syarat yang mereka perlu penuhi sebelum kita luluskan. Kalau dah susah payah nak penuhi syarat-syarat tu, maknanya syarikat tu memang seriuslah nak melabur ke dalam negara kita. Okey semua, soalan terakhir. Dari banyak-banyak pelaburan yang diluluskan, berapa peratus je yang tak dilaksanakan sampai sekarang? Ya, siapa nak cuba jawab?
50% tak jadi, cikgu.
Salah.
30% cikgu.
Salah.
25% cikgu.
Salah.
20% teacher.
Salah. Dari 2021 hingga Mac 2024, hanya 1.6% sahaja projek yang masih belum dilaksanakan. 98.4% sama ada telah siap, sedang dilaksanakan atau dalam perancangan. Apa makna statistik ini? Maknanya bila pelaburan itu diluluskan, it's as good as done. Ya, memang tunggu masa nak buat aja. Sangat jarang pelaburan yang diluluskan tak dilaksanakan. Lepas ini, kalau orang perleceh lagi pelaburan yang diluluskan, tunjuk kat dia orang statistik ini. Faham semua?
Faham, cikgu.
Okey, bagus.
Terima kasih, cikgu.
Terima kasih, cikgu.
Baik, itu adalah penerangan lebih lanjut mengenai pelaburan oleh Kementerian MITI Pelaburan, dan sudah tentu kita akan berkongsi antara data yang telah dikongsikan oleh MIDA sendiri untuk kita saksikan bagaimanakah prestasi pelaburan di Malaysia daripada Januari sehinggalah September 2024. Dan ini adalah datanya, kalau boleh kita saksikan secara keseluruhan. Malaysia berjaya merekodkan jumlah pelaburan yang diluluskan sebanyak 254.7 bilion ringgit, lebih tinggi berbanding iaitu 9 bulan pertama pada tahun lepas, iaitu 230.2 bilion ringgit. Ini adalah jumlah pelaburan yang diluluskan, dan ia telah membabitkan sebanyak, kalau projek, 4,753 projek, lebih tinggi berbanding tahun 2023 9 bulan pertama yang hanya merangkumi 3,937 bilangan projek. Dan daripada projek ini, ia dijangka untuk mencipta peluang pekerjaan sebanyak 159,347, lebih tinggi peluang pekerjaan yang akan dicipta pada tahun 2024 daripada 4,000 lebih projek dan daripada jumlah pelaburan yang telah diluluskan ini. Dan menurut Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Lembaga Pembangunan Pelaburan Malaysia MIDA, Datuk Seri Syamsul Ibrahim Syih Abdul Majid berkata, agensi itu komited untuk memastikan pelaburan ini diterjemahkan kepada manfaat ekonomi yang ketara, peluang pekerjaan berkualiti dan juga kemakmuran jangka panjang. Baik, saya akan terus memperincikan bagaimanakah prestasi pelaburan Januari-September daripada kita meliti daripada segi jumlah pelaburan yang diluluskan, jumlah jangkaan, jumlah pekerjaan baharu yang akan dicipta dengan bilangan projek yang akan dilaksanakan. Kita meliti juga daripada peringkat negeri, ada 5 negeri utama yang menerima pelaburan yang tertinggi setakat ini. Kalau kita saksikan daripada 5 negeri adalah Selangor, wilayah Persekutuan Kuala Lumpur, Kedah, Pulau Pinang dan juga Johor. Dan antara top 5 ini, kita dapat saksikan Selangor adalah antara negeri yang tertinggi, mempunyai pelaburan yang diluluskan sebanyak 66.8 bilion ringgit dengan jumlah perkilangan sebanyak 15.0 bilion ringgit, dan sektor perkhidmatan dengan jumlah pelaburan 51.7 bilion, dan kalau kita lihat jumlah utama keseluruhan sebanyak 38.7 juta ringgit. Dan kita lihat diikuti juga dengan pelaburan kedua tertinggi adalah di negeri wilayah Persekutuan Kuala Lumpur, merekodkan sebanyak 63.9 bilion ringgit di sini. Kalau kita dapat saksikan Selangor dengan wilayah Persekutuan Kuala Lumpur, kedua-dua negeri ini mencatatkan lebih daripada 65 bilion ringgit jumlah pelaburan yang telah diluluskan. Manakala kalau kita lihat Johor, Pulau Pinang dan Kedah antara top 5 yang menerima pelaburan yang tertinggi di Malaysia setakat ini, mereka juga anggaran jumlah daripada segi 18 hinggalah 35 bilion ringgit jumlah pelaburan yang telah diluluskan. Dan daripada segi pelabur asing utama di sini, kalau boleh kita saksikan, di Jerman mengalami pelaburan asing utama sebanyak 30.9 bilion ringgit yang paling tertinggi. Diikuti juga dengan pelaburan asing FDI Republik Rakyat China sebanyak 10.8 bilion ringgit. Dengan kita lihat rakan dagangan utama kita yang lain juga, Amerika Syarikat sebanyak 8.4 bilion ringgit. Diikuti juga dengan Belanda, Singapura, kedua-duanya mencatat lebih daripada 4 bilion ringgit daripada segi pelaburan asing. Dan kalau kita lihat daripada segi pecahan subsektor utama, pertama sekali sudah tentu sektor perkhidmatan yang mempunyai pelaburan yang diluluskan paling tinggi setakat ini dengan mengambil kira cakupan 63.1%, dan daripada sektor ini menerima jumlah yang telah diluluskan adalah pelaburan sebanyak 160.7 bilion ringgit. Dan kalau boleh kita dapat saksikan pecahan daripada sektor perkhidmatan, antara yang tertinggi dicatatkan adalah daripada pelaburan domestik DI yang merekodkan sebanyak 121.5 bilion ringgit, lebih tinggi berbanding 9 bulan pertama pada tahun lepas, banyak 82.9 bilion ringgit. Dengan jumlah pekerjaan dalam sektor ini dijangka akan mencipta lebih 100,000 dengan bilangan projek sebanyak 3,909. Ini adalah sektor perkhidmatan antara sektor yang menerima pelaburan yang tertinggi yang diluluskan. Dan kalau kita lihat secara ringkas perkilangan juga antara yang kedua tertinggi sebanyak 34.9% dengan jumlah pelaburan yang diluluskan daripada 9 bulan pertama pada tahun lepas, dan pada tahun ini telah meningkat kepada 88.8 bilion ringgit. Dan kita lihat antara sektor-sektor utama juga telah menerima jumlah pelaburan yang diluluskan sebanyak 5.2 bilion ringgit. Dan ini adalah antara sektor-sektor utama yang menerima pelaburan yang tinggi, termasuk juga dengan negeri. Dan bagaimanakah pelaburan ini kalau kita dapat jangkakan, bukan sahaja memberi dapat mengukuhkan lagi kita punya ekonomi, sosial rakyat, tetapi di sini kita akan meneliti bagaimana ia akan meningkatkan lagi kesejahteraan ekonomi dan rakyat pada masa akan datang dengan pelaburan-pelaburan ini. Namun bukan pelaburan ini saja yang akan saya kongsikan. Daripada pelaburan yang kita dapat saksi yang telah direkodkan oleh iaitu Kerajaan Madani, kita akan saksikan juga bagaimanakah prestasi ekonomi ataupun Kerajaan Madani setakat 2 tahun pentadbirannya. Kalau boleh saya kongsi di sini, setakat 2 tahun pentadbiran Kerajaan Madani ini adalah, kita boleh cakap, laporan daripada Merdeka Center untuk kita menyaksikan bagaimanakah persepsi rakyat itu sendiri terhadap pentadbiran Kerajaan Madani setakat 2 tahun ini. Dan kalau kita lihat daripada segi responden dalam laporan kajian ini sebanyak 1,207 orang yang berumur 18 tahun ke atas, ini adalah persepsi mereka. Kita lihat ada 2 persepsi, iaitu mereka menganggap pentadbiran Kerajaan Madani berada di on the right track, hala tuju yang betul. Yang kalau kita lihat pihak kedua juga mengatakan pentadbiran ini berada pada hala tuju yang salah. Dan mengapa kalau kita lihat hala tuju betul atau hala tuju salah ini, kita lihat setengah rakyat yang berpandangan bahawa hala ekonomi Madani berada pada hala tuju salah ataupun on the wrong track disebabkan punca utama adalah kebimbangan ekonomi yang telah merekodkan sebanyak 47% responden berkata kalau kita lihat matlamat ekonomi ketika ini adalah berada dalam hala tuju ataupun objektif yang salah kerana mereka bimbang akan kerisauan ataupun kegusaran terhadap gangguan ekonomi. Yang kedua, kalau kita lihat di sini adalah disebabkan pentadbiran lemah dan tidak cekap, termasuk juga dengan ketidakstabilan politik sebanyak 7% dan kepimpinan lemah, termasuk juga dengan isu perkauman. Ini adalah antara faktor-faktor ataupun punca mengapa setengah respon daripada kajian ini menganggap bahawa pentadbiran semasa berada dalam hala tuju yang salah. Manakala yang berpandangan hala tuju kerajaan berada pada landasan yang betul, kita dapat saksikan di sini mengapa mereka menganggap iaitu perspektif begini, kerana 26% responden mengatakan setakat 2 tahun ini mereka telah mengalami daripada segi peningkatan ekonomi, bukan itu saja tapi pentadbiran yang baik, kestabilan politik, kepimpinan yang baik dan juga pembangunan dan infrastruktur yang baik. Dan ini adalah persepsi rakyat terhadap 2 tahun pentadbiran Kerajaan Madani yang mengatakan mengapa hala tuju yang salah dan mengapakah hala tuju betul apabila kita bercakap mengenai objektif ataupun masa depan ekonomi negara. Seterusnya, kalau kita lihat prestasi Kerajaan Madani di sini terbagi kepada 2, yang kita lihat berpuas hati dan tidak berpuas hati. Dan melihat kepada prestasi Perdana Menteri, kalau kita lihat di sini kebanyakannya di sini warna biru ini menggambarkan berpuas hati, yang warna merah ini tidak berpuas hati. Dan di sini kita lihat beberapa aspek, baik pulih imej Malaysia, menarik pelaburan asing, mempertingkatkan tadbir urus perniagaan awam, mengukuhkan ekonomi rakyat dan ini adalah antara sebab-sebab kita meneliti prestasi Perdana Menteri. Dan kita lihat daripada langkah-langkah ini, ramai yang sebenarnya berpuas hati dalam pentadbiran Perdana Menteri pada kali ini kerana mereka meneliti bahawa PM berjaya menarik pelaburan asing yang agak tinggi dengan ramai berpuas hati. Sebanyak 62% responden berpuas hati dengan prestasi Perdana Menteri terhadap perancangan ataupun terhadap pelaksanaan dalam kita lihat komponen ataupun aspek pelaburan. Manakala kita lihat di sini antara mereka juga berpuas hati dengan prestasi ataupun reputasi PM untuk membaik pulih imej Malaysia, dengan responden mencatatkan hampir 60% mereka setuju dengan reformasi yang telah dilakukan oleh kerajaan Madani ini. Namun kalau kita lihat antara ketidakpuashati dalam kalangan rakyat Malaysia ataupun daripada kajian ini, kita dapat lihat 44%, hampir mencecah separuh daripada rakyat Malaysia, mereka tidak puas hati dengan cara pentadbiran ataupun PM mengukuhkan ekonomi rakyat. Ini adalah antara satu perkara yang perlu kita beri perhatian kerana bercakap mengenai ekonomi rakyat, pelbagai aspek yang perlu kita teliti daripada kos sara hidup, kemiskinan dan sudah tentu ini adalah antara perkara yang boleh saya kongsikan setakat ini untuk kita saksikan daripada segi pelaburan yang telah diluluskan daripada Januari sehinggalah September, dan kita sudah menyaksikan juga bagaimanakah iaitu persepsi ataupun sentimen rakyat terhadap pentadbiran kerajaan Madani setakat ini. Dengan itu saya akan mempersilakan tetamu yang sudah bersedia dalam talian untuk kita meneliti bagaimanakah pelaburan ini dapat diterjemahkan kepada manfaat ekonomi yang ketara, peluang pekerjaan yang berkualiti dan juga kemakmuran jangka panjang. Saya mempersilakan Profesor Madya Dr. Aimi Zulhazmi Abdul Rashid, merupakan penganalisis ekonomi UniKL Business School. Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih Dr. kerana sudi meluangkan masa bersama kami. Daripada data yang telah saya kongsikan tadi, kita dapat lihat dua pelaburan, kita lihat pelaburan Malaysia daripada 9 bulan pertama pada tahun 2024, dan kita dapat saksikan juga bagaimanakah sentimen rakyat terhadap pentadbiran Madani ataupun Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim setakat ini. So, tentu pertama sekali saya ingin tanyakan kepada Prof kali ini. Mungkin Prof boleh kongsikan apakah antara dasar atau keadaan ekonomi di Malaysia yang menyumbang, kalau kita boleh saya bacakan, kepada pencapaian 254.7 bilion ringgit dalam pelaburan yang diluluskan sepanjang tahun 2024. Prof, mungkin boleh rangkumkan untuk kami.
Terima kasih Nina menjemput saya sekali lagi. Okey, pertama sekali kalau kita tengok keputusan yang begitu memberangsangkan ya, adalah pertamanya bagi saya kalau kita kan dasar ni saya nampak is working as a team. Memang very coordinated, terutamanya team IT dan very organised lah. Ini menyebabkan kita mendapat hasil yang begitu baik untuk tahun 2024. Jadi perkara ini yang dibuat, dia bukan hanya buat 2024, ia juga dibuat pada planning dari tahun-tahun lepas lagi, daripada tahun 2022 maupun tahun 2023. Jadi usaha yang tersusun oleh MITI dan juga bekerjasama dengan agensi-agensi kerajaan yang lain sebenarnya mempermudahkan apa yang telah dibuat oleh kepimpinan negara oleh PMX lah. Jadi susulan usaha dan komitmen tinggi oleh PMX yang banyak sekali pergi membuat misi-misi pelaburan seluruh dunia. Kalau kita tengok di Timur Tengah, China, Rusia, Amerika Selatan baru-baru ini. Jadi komitmen ini satu komitmen yang tinggi, dan beliau sendiri turun ke Padang berjumpa dengan kepimpinan negara tersebut maupun tokoh-tokoh korporat maupun pelabur asing untuk datang with a personal touch lah ya. Jadi inilah usaha-usaha yang baik, dan dari sini kita dapat melihat itu impak yang begitu positif kepada pemain industri global ya. Jadi ia bukan sahaja menarik ya, bila bercerita tentang Google nak datang, AWS, ini cerita pasal data center yang Nina Jadi bila kita cerita ini, dia juga diwawarkan kepada media. Jadi secara langsung ia juga memberikan satu iklan ya, bahawa Malaysia ini merupakan satu negara yang berjaya menarik pelaburan, terutamanya pusat data dunia di rantau Asia ini sendiri. Jadi secara langsung ia mewujudkan pelbagai impak yang positif kepada negara dengan jumlah pelaburan yang luluskan begitu besar sekali. Dan apa yang kita perlu ingat, ia bukanlah satu effort yang dibuat pada tahun 2024 saja, tetapi ia memerlukan begitu banyak koordinasi, begitu banyak usaha daripada tahun yang lalu juga. Jadi sekarang kita dah melihat betapa usaha usaha keras yang dibuat oleh kerajaan yang dipimpin oleh Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim maupun daripada MITI sendiri telah berjaya meletakkan Malaysia kembali menjadi salah satu daya penarik lah kepada para pelaburan asing, terutamanya daripada industri teknologi itu sendiri, Nina.
Prof, kalau kita meneliti daripada dua data yang telah saya bentangkan tadi untuk 9 bulan pertama tahun ini, kita menyaksikan lebih 2,054 bilion ringgit antara pelaburan yang telah diluluskan, membabitkan lebih 4,700 projek, termasuk juga dengan jangkaan untuk menjana lebih 159,000 pekerjaan. Namun kalau kita lihat daripada segi sentimen persepsi rakyat terhadap data ataupun kajian Merdeka Center yang menunjukkan rakyat sebenarnya berpuas hati dengan hasil kerajaan atau usaha kerajaan untuk menarik pelaburan masuk ke dalam negara, tetapi kalau kita lihat hampir separuh mereka tidak berpuas hati dengan usaha kerajaan untuk mengukuhkan lagi ekonomi rakyat. Jadi gabungkan kedua-dua data situasi ini, bagaimana Prof mentafsir pertumbuhan dalam penciptaan pekerjaan sebagai gambaran asas ataupun cerminan kepada ekonomi Malaysia? Adakah pekerjaan ini cukup mampan?
Bagi saya itu satu dua data yang menarik kerana perlu yang pertama sekali kita perlu faham input yang masuk ke dalam negara itu apa, pelaburan itu asing. Jadi pelaburan asing itu juga mengambil masa untuk dibawa masuk, dan pada masa yang sama ia turut menjanjikan banyak peluang pekerjaan. Jadi mungkin rakyat masih tunggu apakah kesan daripada pelaburan asing yang nak masuk sebanyak ini. Jadi kita perlu juga sabar kerana sesuatu yang berlaku itu, pelaburan itu penting, dia juga akan mengambil masa mungkin 6 bulan, mungkin 1 tahun, mungkin 2 tahun dan sebagainya. Apa yang penting, kita telah mempunyai asas yang kukuh di mana pelaburan-pelaburan ini dijangka seperti ini jangkakan tadi di mana 159,000 peluang pekerjaan yang baru. Dan kalau kita tengok berbanding dengan tahun lepas, data daripada MIDA itu sendiri mengatakan bahawa kenaikan jumlah pekerjaan ini adalah 75%, 75.9% yang saya baca dan lebih tepat lagi berbanding dengan 10 tahun yang lepas. Jadi dari segi mewujudkan peluang pekerjaan yang baru. Selain daripada itu juga kita perlu melihat, mungkin mereka tidak puas hati, tapi kalau data daripada Jabatan Statistik Malaysia atau DOSM sendiri menyatakan bahawa kadar unemployment rate, kadar pengangguran Malaysia sebenarnya telah turun sehingga 3.2%, iaitu kadar yang terendah sejak tahun sebelum COVID lah, Januari 2020. Jadi ini adalah penurunan yang banyak, dan kalau kita bandingkan bulan ke bulan berbanding dengan bulan Julai tahun ini, 3.4%, bulan Ogos tahun ini kita dah turun pada 3.2%, dan mungkin pada bulan Oktober kita belum ada datanya lagi, mungkin lebih rendah lah. Apa yang penting sekarang, Malaysia dari segi mampan tu Nina, adalah Malaysia sekarang ni begitu selektif dari segi aspek pelaburan. Kita tak ambil semua jenis pelaburan yang mungkin memerlukan kita mengambil ramai lagi pekerja asing dengan kos yang rendah sebagainya, tapi kita lebih melihat kepada khususnya pelaburan yang membawa impak ataupun nilai tinggi, dan inilah pastinya satu pelaburan yang lebih lama, jangka panjang, dan terutamanya seperti pusat data itu sendiri. Seperti kita lihat syarikat agregasi yang datang pada Malaysia ni adalah syarikat agregasi IT ni antara berkatakan 10, bukan syarikat IT terbesar di dunia, malah keseluruhan syarikat besar di dunia didominasi oleh the top 10 adalah IT company. Bukan saja dari mereka syarikat seperti Amazon, Apple, Alphabet, Meta, saya boleh sebutkan lagi, tapi Oracle, Huawei, Samsung, Alibaba, banyak lagi. Jadi perlunya kita mempunyai satu lonjakan ekonomi, dan di manalah dan di sinilah industri IT itu sendiri boleh membuat perubahan kepada ekonomi Malaysia, dan itulah yang ditumpukan oleh kerajaan, itulah yang ditumpukan oleh MITI untuk membawa jenis pelaburan yang mempunyai nilai tinggi.
Dan kalau kita bandingkan Prof mengenai prestasi 9 bulan pertama tahun 2023 dengan 9 bulan pertama tahun ini, kita dapat saksikan peningkatan daripada jumlah pelaburan di peringkat domestik maupun di peringkat pelaburan langsung asing. Jadi kalau kita lihat, adakah langkah reformasi ataupun langkah yang telah sedang dilaksanakan sudah cukup, ataupun kita perlu meneliti lagi antara reformasi struktur yang diperlukan segera agar kita dapat kekalkan daya saing Malaysia dalam menarik pelaburan langsung asing, terutamanya FDI ini, Prof?
Sebenarnya kalau kita lihat struktur ekonomi kita ni, kita perlu mengubah struktur ekonomi kita. Kita lebih tertumpu kepada sektor pengeluaran seperti menumpukan kepada penggunaan buruh, tanah, modal, terutamanya untuk merangsangkan ekonomi yang lebih domestik lah. Modal kita banyak tertumpu kepada projek-projek yang berstatus quo, sektor tradisional seperti pertanian, peladangan, hartanah, utiliti. Jadi ini bukan tak bagus, dia bagus tapi ia memberikan dividen yang baik tetapi ia tidak memacu pertumbuhan yang kita perlukan. Jadi tumpuan dasar ekonomi kita haruslah beralih ke arah menggalakkan pelaburan dalam pertumbuhan yang jenis tinggi, sedikit berisiko tinggi, ya, yang boleh menawarkan penyelesaian jangka panjang untuk menaikkan pendapatan rakyat Malaysia. Jadi di sinilah kita harus bijak dalam mencari jenis pelaburan yang tertentu dan bagaimanakah kita meningkatkan ekonomi negara itu sendiri. Dan kita boleh lihat contoh-contoh daripada negara-negara yang dulunya sebaris dengan kita seperti Taiwan, Korea Selatan, mana mereka telah menganjak naik menjadi sebuah negara maju berbanding kita pada masa yang sama 20 tahun yang lalu. Dan ini yang harus kita lihat dan apakah kuncinya itu adalah industri teknologi itu sendiri. Jadi perlunya kita melihat pelaburan asing itu ataupun FDI itu digunakan sebaik-baiknya untuk meningkatkan ekonomi negara.
Dan kita tahu melihat kehadapan ramai yang menjangkakan pada tahun 2025 kita lihat ekonomi Malaysia berada dalam keadaan atau berjangkaan optimistik tetapi berhati-hati mengikut kepada faktor luaran terutamanya dijangka kalau kita lihat ketegangan geopolitik yang semakin tegang ini dengan iaitu Presiden baharu Donald Trump. Kita menunggu juga apakah antara dasar polisi yang akan dilaksanakan beliau pada tahun depan dan pakar penganalisis dan juga agensi data juga mengatakan bahawa ekonomi domestik akan jadi pemacu untuk ketahanan negara ini. Jadi bagaimana untuk kita lihat langkah-langkah domestik termasuk juga dengan pelaburan langsung domestik DDI yang akan memacu KDNK ekonomi negara, keadaannya dalam membina ketahanan ekonomi jangka panjang. Kita nak lihat peran DDI dalam memacu ekonomi jangka panjang dari saingnya dan bagaimanakah inisiatif Gear Up dapat memperkasakannya terutama bila kita bercakap mengenai pelibatan langsung GLIC ni Prof.
Baik Nina, daripada data yang kita lihat yang Nina bentangkan tadi betapa sebenarnya DDI Direct Domestic Investment itu melebihi FDI itu. Ini satu langkah yang baik ya, yang kita lihat ya, dengan 254 itu 51% adalah daripada Direct Domestic Investment. Menunjukkan kita tidak terlalu bergantung kepada FDI dan pada masa yang sama pelaburan oleh Direct Domestic Investment maupun daripada syarikat-syarikat seperti GLC ya, itu satu inisiatif yang dibuat oleh MOF di mana ia menggalakkan 6 syarikat GLC ataupun GLIC milik kerajaan untuk melabur kira-kira 120 bilion ringgit dalam masa 5 tahun yang bermula pada tahun ini. Ia juga menunjukkan betapa komitmen kerajaan. Ia juga menunjukkan betapa ia menarik untuk juga menarik FDI. FDI itu kalau syarikat Malaysia, milik Malaysia sendiri melabur dan mempercayai potensi ekonomi ia sendiri, kenapa kita tidak? Dan kita harus mengambil peluang ini untuk menjadi partner dan sebagainya kepada mereka kerana mereka bukan hanya terlalu bergantung pada FDI itu saja. Jadi peranan GLC dan GLIC itu bukan hanya saja membawa kepada menjadi pemangkin pada ekonomi domestik, dia juga turut menjadi satu teras dalam membina ataupun sektor ekonomi yang lain. Contohnya kepada PMKS itu sendiri. Bagaimanakah ia menarik atau membangunkan sektor perniagaan mikro kecil sederhana ke dalam rangkaian global dunia ya, bagaimana syarikat-syarikat Malaysia yang kecil-kecil dibawa naik oleh GLC dan GLIC Malaysia untuk menjadi pembekal, menjadi vendor kepada pelabur yang datang ke Malaysia. Jadi aspek ini kita lihat ada keseimbangan di antara DDI maupun FDI. Inilah satu langkah yang cukup baik. Kita tak mahu terlalu bergantung pada FDI. Kerana kalau kita terlalu bergantung FDI, misalnya ada berlakunya situasi yang seperti Nina katakan tadi, perubahan kepada sektor ekonomi dunia tahun hadapan dengan geopolitiknya, dengan kepimpinan baru di masyarakat yang dikatakan akan mempengaruhi pelbagai faktor dunia pada tahun hadapan. Jadi kita hanya tidak terlalu bergantung pada FDI, tapi pada masa sama kita berjaya mengimbangkan kedua-duanya sekali. Dan saya percaya syarikat-syarikat yang melabur di Malaysia bukannya pada datang ke Malaysia hanya untuk sekadar untuk 1 atau 2 tahun, tapi mereka berada untuk mungkin 10 tahun, 20 tahun untuk langkah jangka panjang. Inilah yang harus kita sokong kerana ia akan meletakkan Malaysia pada kedudukan ekonomi menjadi sebuah negara maju seperti yang kita mahukan. Dalam rangka ekonomi madani, Malaysia mahu menjadi negara berpendapatan tinggi, top 30 in the world dalam tahun 2033 ni.
Dan itu juga dah adalah harapan kita bercakap mengenai top 30 in the world dalam konteks pelaburan. Sekali lagi saya nak ucapkan terima kasih kepada Profesor Madya Dr. Aimi Zulhazmi Abdul Rashid merupakan penganalisis ekonomi UNI KL Business School kerana bantu menterjemahkan apakah antara faktor yang menyumbang kepada pelaburan dan apakah antara kesan-kesannya kepada ekonomi dan juga sosial rakyat bergerak ke hadapan. Jangan ke mana-mana, banyak lagi laporan yang akan kami bawakan selepas ini.
Segalanya bermula di sini dengan hanya wansa. Digital karma bukan sembarangan.
Get him out of here. I'll cover you.
Dengan saya, jaga-jaga. Begitu juga dengan kami.
Sekarang ni siapa perempuan tu?
Dendam itu manis.
I ada idea.
Lebih-lebih lagi bila berganda.
Ladies!
Jangan terlalu lurus.
You dah ada madu?
Saya tak nak hilang. Anda mungkin dipedaya.
You owe him 50k? Terima pembalasan.
Tewaskan lawan.
Kau nak hidup?
Menentang arus dan bebaskan diri.
Kau keluar.
Setiap saat kami bersama.
Merapatkan kita.
Saya akan kau. Inilah kami, the home of originals.
Malaysia sebenarnya berada di kedudukan kedua terburuk di dunia berkaitan keseimbangan hidup dan kerja.
LRT3 sudah akan mula beroperasi suku ketiga 2025. Kerja-kerja fizikal dan penstrukturan sudah mencecah 95%.
KPM sebenarnya sedang memperincikan cadangan untuk menyediakan allowance kos sara hidup tingkatan 6.
Libat urus antara umat Islam dan agama lain penting supaya dapat mengelakkan ataupun membawa kepada Islamofobia.
Kementerian Dalam Negeri memberi lampu hijau supaya pengesanan dadah dilakukan terhadap pengguna vape.
Tahap integriti warga polis di Raja Malaysia PDRM masih membimbangkan walaupun peringatan dan amaran diberikan berulang kali.
Anwar menegaskan bahawa negara ini tidak mengiktiraf Israel secara de jure meskipun keberadaan negara itu di peringkat antarabangsa.
Malaysia tidak akan meminda peta sempadan maritim dan tetap mempertahankan kawasan dan kedaulatan negara di Laut Cina Selatan.
All right, for this segment, we're going to be focusing on real estate and property, where the Ministry of Housing and Local Government, KPKT, is optimistic Malaysia's property sector will hit 200 billion ringgit in sales this year, doubling its initial KPI target with 100.5 billion ringgit already achieved in the first half. As reported by NAPIC, the sector's growth has exceeded expectations, benefiting over 200 related industries like construction, banking and furniture. However, sustaining this momentum demands robust property management policies to address regulatory gaps that risk impacting property owners, tenants and the market. Let's welcome our guest ready to shed light on the importance of empowering policies to ensure the sector's success benefits all stakeholders. I welcome you, Sulaiman Sahih, the Director of Research, Rahim Inco International. Sediam Berhad, I want to say thank you very much, Rahim, for joining me. Firstly, we want to take a look on how to understand the current state of property management. This is particularly in industry assessment. What is your assessment or evaluation of the current state of property management practices in Malaysia so far?
Good morning. A very interesting topic indeed. As you actually open up with the property market, actually is actually looking to be a bit better this year. And one of the key points before we actually forget is how well do we manage our properties. Generally in Malaysia, our properties are well managed in one point, but there's a lot of room for improvement still. As you can imagine, the kind of properties that we actually have in the country are mixed of residential, commercial, industrial, and high-rise and low-rise buildings. There was actually a connotation a few years ago where we actually built superb, world-class, first-grade properties and buildings, but our maintenance is a bit lacking in terms of our focus for maintenance. But that being said, that's why we actually see some of the instances where there were some problems in terms of the property being used, or there's some failure of certain systems within a building, which actually underlines the importance of having good property management systems and good property management regime, which is actually a multifactorial angle, as well as it involves a lot of different parties to actually get to a building being efficiently being operated.
And this is some of the notable gaps or efficiency we can see within the property markets. And talking about the key stakeholders, who are the primary stakeholders in Malaysia's property management ecosystem, and how well do they currently collaborate to address challenges related to public interests?
Property management in Malaysia is a professional service. It's actually regulated under Act 242, under the Act of Valuers, Appraisers, Estate Agents and Property Managers Malaysia. And there's a board of Valuers, Appraisers, Estate Agents and Property Managers who actually governs and regulate the actual practice of property management. But in terms of stakeholders, it is much more than just the board and the practitioner. As you can imagine, the life of a building when it's born, if you like, is actually started off with the developers who actually develop the building, and they are typically sold to individual owners, and that's why we can see whether a property can be stratified, a strata title property like your condominiums and service apartments where there's multiple owners. Or it can just be on a single title where it is it is a non-strata property, but still it needs to be managed. So that's from the developer side, selling to the owners, and these owners are the ones who are actually going to stay there and become the custodian of the building. And then when they actually gather together, because they are the one who is occupying, and under the Strata Management Act, or even as a building owner, they would actually manage the building. And that's where they can either manage it themselves directly as part of their volunteers amongst their members, or even more often than not, is that it's being, they call professionals to actually manage. And these professionals are the ones that are actually being regulated by the board. And that is not just the stakeholders, because there's a lot of compliance matters, the local authorities, even the COB, Commissioner of Buildings, as well as the normal person on the street, the visitors. If you actually have a shopping complex, you actually have visitors and tenants. And these are all key stakeholders on top of the investors and the building owners and the actual managers themselves to make sure that things run smoothly and it's safe for you to actually conduct the various kind of activities, be it residential or even commercial activities.
And this is how they collaborate or cooperate to address any challenges or issue within the property or real estate sector. And maybe you can share some examples from practices. Can you provide specific examples of issues or disputes arising from particularly in unregulated properties management practices that illustrate the urgency for reform?
This is where the need for regulation within the property management practice is very important. And we already have a system in place, although there's still room for improvement and further enhancement, especially with new innovation and whatnot. But the importance of this is to avoid certain tragic incidents. Or one thing is actually for a machinery failure, or even if a person is trapped in a lift because of the ill-conceived regime of maintenance, preventive maintenance, and there's a lot of different sorts of and classes of maintenance regimes that you actually see. But that's actually on the physical side of things. Another aspect is actually on the services, services where you would actually monitor the various service providers, which is also one of the stakeholders within the property management ecosystem, where if the services are not up to mark or up to code, you'll have failure in terms of posing some risk to the general population, or even to certain instances where there'll be some unfortunate incidents that we want to avoid. That's actually on the on those physical matters that you can actually see. There's also the element of financial management, which is actually very important. As I actually mentioned earlier, there are a lot of stratified strata properties like condominiums and whatnot, where there's multiple owners. And the management of the building is not just done by a single owner. It is actually through a committee that's formed, and it's actually governed under Act 757 or the Strata Management Act, where the system and the mechanism of how it's being managed through the formation of joint management bodies and which comes up with joint management committee as well as management corporations. These are the custodian of a property, and they actually have to manage the property, the physical, the social angle and whatnot, as well as the financial elements. And that's where the collection of service charges, the transparency and accountability of financial systems is actually very, very important.
And in context of regulation rationale, why is regulation necessary for property management in Malaysia especially? Could self-regulation by industry players ever be sufficient to address public interest concerns?
If we look at the need to regulate something, it's because of the stakes involved. As you can imagine, a property would actually require a whole lot of skill sets, knowledge base, as well as the cognizance and knowledge, as well as being aware of the regulations, aware of the needs, requirements of the local authorities. And that's why this regulation is actually needed. One is actually to keep our practitioners all in check with regards to their qualification, in terms of their competency, as well as their technical prowess, if you like. And on top of that, because of the regulation, you can imagine a person who has probably graduated from the qualified university for the qualification of property management a few years ago, who does not actually keep up with the latest trends in terms of building technology, in terms of the environmental rules and regulation, in terms of the transparency and reporting, for example. And that's why the regulation is actually needed. And on top of that, all these actually are basically dealing with other people's, the public, the Rakyat's funds and money. These are their life saving. They actually use to actually purchase a property or even occupy the property or rent a property. So in keeping their interests at the utmost highest interest focus, we need to make sure that all the necessary activities and precautionary measures, as well as compliance measures, are actually adhered to at all times.
And in what ways does the lack of robust regulations put the consumer at risk? Maybe you can share with us some of the recurring themes that are affecting owners and tenants in a silent risk.
If we look at how, especially for strata management, strata properties, how it's being managed in the past, before Act 663, which is the Building and Common Properties Act, Maintenance and Management, 2007, before it was implemented, which is now repealed, by the way, now it's actually replaced by the Strata Management Act. Before that period, the management of a property, it's pretty much loose in a way. Yeah? It's looser comparatively. That's where the management of the accounts, management of the activities or purchasing or even funds allocation for certain maintenance is actually being questioned, or their queries by the owners. So the act that was back then in 2007 was actually created to actually allow individual owners to be represented within the entity called the joint management body, and therefore the decisions that are made are actually in the best interest of the custodian. Typically, upon the completion of a building, for the management of property is the developer. But the owners would also like to actually make sure that things are transparent, decisions are made with good governance, and those things are actually being implemented all the way. So now with the Strata Management Act, the entity of JMB as well as the MCs after the Strata title is actually being issued, where the development is now being controlled, where every stakeholder, especially the individual owners, who actually has the rights, to actually make decision, to actually vote in an AGM or an annual general meeting towards critical matters such as the setting of your maintenance charges, the collection of funds, how much rate do they actually want to charge the individual owners, and the mechanism of it, which is actually already transcribed using share units. That's a correct mechanism, whereby some errant or those unregulated property managers or those who are not really well versed with the law as well as the needs and the rationale of those laws actually jeopardize the whole collection system of the maintenance charges, which then jeopardize the longevity of the property.
And this the impact of regulations we can see towards property owners, tenants, and the real estate market, as we can see as a whole. Again, I would say thank you very much, Sulaiman Sahir, Director Research, Rahim & Co International, sudah berhad, for helping us understand the critical need for robust property management regulation to safeguard public interest and also to elevate industry standards. And all of our discussion here will be featured in astroawani.com across all social media platforms. And Niaga Awani will be taking a short break, and we'll be right back with my colleague Ibrahim Sani.
We are still living in a world that is fairly unequal. We need growth because we need to improve the quality of our lives.
We see sluggish growth year after year after year. Richer countries doing much better than poor countries.
We have accelerated the use of natural resources. We're realizing that prosperity has destroyed the planet. We need to redefine what prosperity is.
In today's world, nothing is static. The number of external shocks is higher and they're deeper.
At a time of profound geopolitical uncertainty, we do have to make significant corrections in the way we organize ourselves globally.
We do know we need to create the economic growth. At the same token, to make that human-centered.
We don't need growth for growth's sake. We need a new model for growth.
If we talk about classical GDP growth, the productivity is the most important thing. But you don't cover, for example, well-being, air quality. You don't cover the damage on the natural resources.
We need a much broader range of measures that we consider, such as happiness, such as higher life expectancy, such as more leisure.
Is there value just in seeing simply a high growth rate? We are seeing increasingly that people who have a relatively high GDP per capita income, that they're ranking lower sometimes in happiness.
Productivity is an important measure, but most certainly not sufficient for measuring the quality improvements that we need to see in people's lives.
We're talking about reimagining growth. It's no longer just the percentage of growth. It's about sustainability. It's about inclusivity. It's about innovation. It's about creating a resilient economy.
To increase the resilience of the system, we need to embrace complexity. And that will not be possible if we only look at economic numbers. Everybody has to contribute. You need also multilateral because of the multi-dimension of the challenge we are facing.
How do we get all the actors in the economic system working together, investing, innovating towards the largest problems that we have to make sure that we share both the risks and the rewards?
We've set up the Future of Growth initiative to transition from the growth that we currently have to new models that put people at the very heart of development. With a clear blueprint and by working together, it is possible to design a new future of inclusive, resilient, innovative, and sustainable growth.
DataStax, a leader in data management solution, is transforming how businesses build and deploy AI applications with its innovative low-code platform, LangFlow. This cutting-edge tool simplifies the design implementation of generative AI, Gen AI, and retrieval augmented generation RAG applications, allowing companies to leverage artificial intelligence more efficiently and effectively.
LangFlow features a visual drag-and-drop interface that enables developers to design complex AI workflows without requiring deep coding expertise. By integrating key components such as vector databases, embedding models, and large language models (LLMs), LangFlow makes it easier for businesses to create scalable, intelligent applications that meet their specific needs.
The really big benefit of LangFlow is it makes it easy to build Gen AI applications. Right? It integrates with various data sources, it integrates with various embedding models, it integrates with various vector databases, it integrates with various large language models, it runs on any cloud, right? It makes it easy to assemble the application as easy as possible, to experiment within the application to see what works, right? You can change models easily to see which one is the best for your application. So as a result, with LangFlow, you get a developer tool that cuts down time to production, really significantly. So if the company has less resources, right, like LangFlow is even more valuable in that case, right? Like it just requires less effort, less expertise, right? Like it gives you a paved path, kind of how to get to POC, to a demo, to a production use case. If you think about what it would take to build an application, right? Like you have to figure out how to ingest data, how to use it, how to put it in an API, how to call it from an API, right? Like that's all many steps that you would need to do without LangFlow. Inside LangFlow, that becomes kind of UI-driven things, UI-driven tasks that you can easily do, connect to code, and get to the resulting API with a few clicks.
Designed for seamless integration, LangFlow supports DataStax's scalable databases such as Astro and open source tools, ensuring robust performance for AI applications. The platform is built on Apache Cassandra, which supports distributed data management, making LangFlow ideal for applications that require high availability and real-time responsiveness. With LangFlow, businesses can easily design workflows that combine generative AI with real-time data to create intelligent chatbots, personalized recommendations, and predictive analytics. Additionally, as an open-source tool, LangFlow fosters a collaborative environment where developers can contribute and adapt the platform to meet evolving requirements. LangFlow is already making an impact across various industries. In retail, it is enabling personalized shopping experiences powered by real-time customer insights. In healthcare, LangFlow is being used for predictive diagnostics and patient monitoring. The finance sector is benefiting from LangFlow's capabilities for fraud detection and risk management, while in e-commerce, it enhances product research and also recommendation engines. Commenting on possibility of biasness in AI development, Ed Arnov, Chief Product Officer DataStax, said DataStax provides guide rails, an innovative set of safety and performance features designed to help businesses securely deploy and manage artificial intelligence AI applications. As AI technologies, including generative AI, Gen AI, become increasingly integral to modern business operations, DataStax's guardrails offer critical tools to ensure these applications operate ethically, securely, and in compliance with global regulations. DataStax's guardrails provide a comprehensive framework for businesses to safely leverage AI by offering robust tools for security, data integrity, and regulatory compliance.
So some of the stuff we've been doing with NVIDIA is leveraging a technology called guardrails. And the guardrails can be used both in terms of looking at the questions people are asking and figuring out whether that's a question we want to try to answer. It can be used with the response that is being produced to make sure that is an accurate or appropriate response. It can also be used for the content that you are ingesting to make sure that, for example, if you are taking content or knowledge that might be coming from outside of your organization, do you want to actually have that in your database and use that in the results? So guardrails are one of the important technologies for that, and that's part of the. It's been an important part of the partnership that we introduced with NVIDIA.
By offering solutions that monitor and control AI behaviors, DataStax ensures businesses can prevent misuse, safeguard sensitive data, and comply with standards like GDPR, HIPAA, and other industry regulations.
Apa signifikan dengan pengumuman ataupun berita yang keluar dari media China ini berkaitan dengan hasrat Malaysia untuk menyertai gabungan BRICS?
Kita mau dapat lebih banyak umpamanya pelaburan daripada negara China.
Kalau melihat kepada Akta Kanak-Kanak 2001, adakah kita terlalu lambat untuk melihat proses untuk meminda Akta Sejak?
Kita perlu ada penyelarasan. Kita tak mahu bekerja secara silo.
Thanks for joining us. This is The Economy. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. I am currently at the humble abode of my long-time friend, Sharat Kutan. How are you, Sharat?
I'm very good, thank you.
Clearly, you're a very learned person. These books are very nice ornaments to your household. Any other furniture that you want to
No, there's paintings, but apart from that, I don't think there's anything to recommend.
Let's come down to the brass tacks. How real are you in reading these books, or are they just really furniture?
Well, actually, I read, but I do read slowly. It really is a question of...
a page a year?
You know, I've managed a couple of books. We can talk about the books I've read.
In your lifetime, so about 5 of them.
But no, actually, in preparation for the show, actually not. But I have been reading about American politics, so it's something I like.
Okay, fine. So you have prompted me to ask you about Trump inauguration, impact on Malaysia, and other boring stuff that we need to talk about during the Christmas period. But generally speaking, 2016, we were together at BFM. We had an office pool where we did the haram thing, which is betting. I don't know whether you remember this. Yeah, of course, you're slightly aged. I'm not too sure if memory serves you well now. But
with the cobwebs.
Tak apa, kita dah vote dah sekarang, dua-dua. But generally speaking, only you and me voted that Trump would win. The entire office thought at that point in time Hillary Clinton would win and win easy, because nobody would have thought that a clown such as Trump could win. Turned out he won. My question to you now is, did you expect him to win this time round? Because I certainly fully fledged did. And the difference between 2024 election versus 2016 election, a lot more people actually kind of believe that Trump would win. Whether or not they want Trump to win or not is another matter, but the inability to grasp reality of how real politics works today is as such where people actually thought Trump could win. Were you one of those folks?
Well, it's very hard for me to say because I didn't have a sense of the ground. I think that's very important. I just read, American websites. But I think that one thing I got, and I'm typically quite suspicious of, is this politics of contempt and mockery, right? So one of the things that I think a lot of liberals and people who supported Kamala Harris and such do is to kind of dismiss Trump because, as you say, of his personality, these kind of absurd statements that he makes sometimes. But I was trying to understand where this is coming from, the kind of Trump phenomena for some time now. And I've been reading around the topic. So I wasn't sure because there was also a lot of analysis of how the polls can get it wrong, and they often do get it wrong. And part of it is they don't know how to poll Trump supporters. They don't really understand. And sometimes I think they're blinded by their own prejudices, right? So in refusing whatever they think of him as a fascist or whatever, they blind themselves from seeing what's actually happening on the ground.
And this is, of course, can be extrapolated to all the other markets, countries around the world. We've seen how strong family names can keep being voted back into office in Southeast Asia, for instance. We've seen the Arroyos, the Macapagals. We've seen how the Shinawat is now back in office. We've seen how Jokowi, for instance, is slowly building his dynasty. If I'm not mistaken, last week they were voted out of his own party, but that's, in my opinion, a rather temporary measure, or they can just hop to another party and so on. This whole politics of contempt and politics of disillusionment, is it new? I don't think so, though.
So, I mean, for me, okay, so there's several things I think you kind of point to. One is the politics of mocking your opponent, dismissing your opponent as being something less worthy of, kind of serious consideration. I think that's what was happening from the liberal side, looking at conservatives, looking at Trump and the Trump phenomena. That's one thing. The disillusionment, I think, is something that's very real. From what I read of American politics, that there is a disillusionment among many supporters, and I think the way in which Biden and Kamala Harris played the Palestine-Gaza issue, I think bred a lot of disappointment and disillusionment among young people in America. But again, I see America from a distance, like you do. I mean, you probably spend more time there. I've visited twice, so I don't know very much. I try to read, and I try to read people whose analysis is quite grounded in what's happening. So I think the best books I've read on the topic is Deer Hunting with Jesus, which is a book that looks at why the working class in America seems to vote for people like Trump. I'm a billionaire who's now putting together a cabinet full of billionaires. Why would the working class do that? And such. And also I read a book about Steve Bannon and the linkages between him and other ideologues of his sort, Alexander Dugin in Russia and all that. So speaking about the books, I do read the books I buy. It takes me a bit of time, but I do read books partly because I want an insider view of what is happening, and something I can't have myself because I'm not there. Yeah. But
another element is, of course, reading is one thing. It's the discourse that follows afterwards that is more important. That would perhaps deepen your understanding of the kind of writings that you read. Based on this, and of course, I think you're selling yourself short here. You too have a lot of counterparties, and you do meet a lot more people, perhaps more than I do. The reading then, therefore, on the ground, how do you feel the sentiment is like? Is the disillusionment now crossing over to the blue states? Folks in California and New York, they are two completely different animals compared to the rest of the Midwest America and so on.
I have no idea. I mean, this is really not... So, I mean, you've invited someone on the show who's completely unqualified to talk about American politics. Yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing here. Yeah. Except this is my apartment. Yeah. Okay, but
I have no idea what I'm doing here.
I have a reason to be in this house. No, but I'll point you to a book I started. I wanted to read partly because in anticipation of the inauguration, the second Trump administration, was a book by Michael Lewis called The Fifth Risk, and this is about the transition, right? So he writes about this officer's transition that every presidential candidate of a certain stature has to put in place even before they have gone to the polls. The officers, what they had to do is they had to put a transition team together. They have to meet people in government and understand what is going on so that when they take over, they can manage it better, right? So what Michael Lewis does is very grounded report on this whole process. Speaking about the Obama administration, how it came in and also didn't do very well in terms of the transition, but when they left, they put in these amazing processes. The problem was that when Trump came on, he just largely ignored this, and he ignored it for a number of reasons, partly the money, because he had to spend his own money for the transition. And so what Michael Lewis points to is what is now, I think, big in the news and something we all should be watching. If you're interested in American politics and interested in where this is going, is the dismantling of the administrative state. So that's a book I read, in order to understand, I mean, things that most of us find difficult. I think a lot of Malaysians wouldn't know how to describe our government. It's the entire network of agencies and who gets selected and all that. But one of the things that I think Trump does is that he he has demonized the administrative state. The question is that just a broad ideological brush, or is he talking about specific, the lack of accountability, one of the criticisms, the cost of the American administrative state, all that is there. And then this book is quite enlightening in the sense of talking about how complex American government is. And so when Trump takes over, and of course, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, is it Ramaswamy,
Yes.
right? I mean, they are tasked with dismantling the administrative state. So that's a story. When it comes to the second Trump term, I'm very interested in that, because I'm interested to see how and what he does.
Okay, are you also looking at perhaps some of the early appointments made, maybe scrutinizing, other than Vivek and Elon? I think those are the two big headlines. But do you feel that the overtures that is currently being done by Trump prior to his inauguration is piquing your interest a lot more?
Well, only because that's the headline. So there's, if you go to politico.com, they have a kind of, what do they call it? A dashboard for the picks.
Yeah.
And I think one of the early ideas, of one of the early stories, was Trump was putting these people that weren't necessarily some candidates that the Republicans would approve of, and trying to push them through because he wanted to demonstrate his power against the Republicans. But he's had a lot of pushback, and he's had candidates fall out, right? Because of scandals or inappropriateness, and there are Republicans who are not playing ball with him, at least in Congress. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know, again, I don't know enough about like a Tulsi Gabbard, is it their name is, and all these people.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah. So
former Democrat, by the way.
Yeah, former Democrat, and part Asian, whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, I think it's a story of governance. I think the one thing that we all should put aside when looking at the Trump administration, the coming Trump administration, is not to demonize it, not to come to the story of Trump with fear or loathing. I think that clouds our own judgment. So, I mean, to really step back and think of Trump as a phenomena, think of Trump as a symptom of what is changing in America today, in terms of its economy, in terms of its politics, and trying to take a measure from there, rather than decide from the get-go that you hate Trump or he's disagreeable, or on the other side you love Trump because he's going to deliver all these wonderful things. And I know a lot of Malaysians are kind of in their hearts Trump supporters.
Yes,
yeah.
I have met a few.
Yeah. There are a lot of Trump supporters in Malaysia, and they dislike the liberal, loathing of Trump. But they themselves are perhaps equally delusional. I mean, I think, on all sides.
No, I was about to say that. I mean, on the point of delusional, I think I can argue any side of the political spectrum can be accused of being part of that. In fact, the shared delusion amongst ardent supporters of any political spectrum is going to be evident when you start trying to be a little bit more constructive and a little bit more criticizing of one's political alliance and one's political policy. My issue here is, how does this translate to us here across the world? I mean, 2016 Trump can be argued is going to be a little bit different from 2024 Trump. And from what I read as an outsider as well, this is going to be a slightly different Trump than we knew of from the first time he became.
Better prepared.
Better accustomed to the situation. He probably understands the real politic behind it. He probably understands the great machinery that is running the government and the kind of reactions of world leaders. There is this whole idea of Trump not knowing or not aware of his surroundings, but I doubt that that is the true case.
Yeah, so he just had his first press conference at, what is it, Mar-a-Lago,
Florida.
Yeah, that's right. So he's had his first press conference. All things came up. The inauguration came up, and he said about, he's spoken to 100 leaders and 100 world leaders are coming. But interestingly, he mentioned Xi Jinping, and he said, I hope he comes. We've invited him. He says, Xi Jinping is a great friend. I've talked to him for hours. And so the idea that with Trump, what we'll get is this, you know, that U.S.-China relations are going to sour even more. Might not, I mean, we don't know, right? But this was his initial gambit, is to say that Xi Jinping is a friend. So, I mean, I think for us in this part of the world where superpower rivalries are going to be something to watch, you know, any hot encounters in the South China Sea are going to be problematic, all those kinds of things, right? As these two superpowers kind of jostle for influence, or at least the American, you know, kind of architecture of security architecture that's been built here is now challenged by China. I think we're all concerned about that. We're concerned about a trade war and such. But I mean, his initial gambit, at least in the press conference, seemed a little less of that sort. So I don't know where he's going. We do know that his pick for, I think, I don't know if it's ambassador to China or trade fella, is somebody who's a hawk.
Yeah.
But, you know, the thing is, I think people have to be realistic. All countries try to promote their national interests, and Trump is no different, right? Trump speaks the language of economic nationalism, of protecting American jobs, which is why whatever accusations of racism you might level at him, when you look at the numbers that voted were among black males,
actually it cuts across the demography.
Yeah, he does very well.
Completely different from 2016.
Why? Because they see in him a strong leader, somebody who's going to stand up for America. Yet you might not like the whole "Make America Great Again" stuff, and you might think, "Oh, this is dangerous for, you know, what somebody like Michael Mandelbaum calls, you know, a hyperpower." You know, but I think that's in decline. You see somebody who is, you know, standing up for America. And why not, right? I mean, if you're American, if you're a Malaysian, you want, you know, your prime minister to stand up for you.
Yeah.
If you're American, you want your president to stand up for you, right? And for your country and its interests. So I think there's a lot that's interesting in the way Trump is going to manage international relations. You know, he kind of rather oddly enough, took on the mantle of the peace candidate during the elections, right? Yeah. So, but you know, but if you compare him to Biden, who, you know, declared himself a Zionist and was, you know, and has funded the genocide in Gaza, and Kamala's own kind of weird, you know, like, you know, and then the Democratic Party being, you know, completely slavish to the Zionist, you know, lobby. Yeah. So, you know, why not? Why not Trump, right? But I think what you see in Trump is somebody who says things that people think, yeah, okay, he's got short sentences. But, you know, he says things like, you know, strength, you know, yeah, I mean, you negotiate from a position of power, you know, I mean, he just says things that things are huge, things are awesome, they'll get done in a day. I mean, you know, his messaging is kind of clear, right? And, you know, Americans, maybe they don't like long sentences, too many subclauses, and maybe the kind of what they think is the slipperiness that comes from a liberal establishment. I mean, I am nauseated by American liberals and the liberal establishment across the world myself. I mean, following the genocide, which is to say they're very slippery. They're just people who won't speak straight, right? Who want to. So, I mean, whatever it is, I think we kind of look at Trump with much less bigotry, without those blinders, and maybe we'll get a better sense of who he is and what he'll do.
That retreatist element of American globalization, do you feel that that is more evident now, or it's just mostly posturing?
Okay, so this is another book I've been reading, and this is about...
Banyaklah book you read. So
I do, I just trying to prove you see,
it's not props.
I do read. Fine. I do read. So this book is called The Rise and Fall of the Neoliberal Order, and it basically traces different periods, periods of consensus, right? The consensus coming out of America after the stock market crash of 1929, right? And that sort of New Deal thing, the idea that you had to respect labor and you had to have welfare, and capitalism couldn't be unencumbered, right? It had to be regulated and all that. Now that was a consensus that survived until you know, the 70s, and started to break down, partly because as this author argues, what was holding it together was the Cold War and the Soviet Union and communism as an alternative to capitalism. So once that started to fall apart, then you have kind of rapacious capitalism that we see in neoliberalism, that the Democrats that Reagan started and, you know, what's his name, Bill Clinton perfected, right? It's one that does not respect organized labor, that has said, well, we don't care if you don't have jobs or your jobs, you know, move to other countries, right? And so labor in America has been under deep pressure. Now we're in that period where that consensus is also kind of faltering and breaking. Yeah. Well, what Trump, and this is where because I haven't finished the book, this is where I'm not so sure what Trump is in terms of that, right? In terms of this transition period, because he's a man, because he wants to dismantle the administrative state, is against regulation. He thinks that American society and economy is overly regulated. He wants to deregulate it. He thinks we'll free things up, create more jobs. That's the ideological position. Whether it does or not, I don't know. So who he is in terms of these broader movements, I think is what we should look at. So instead of getting caught up in the headlines that, you know, pick up on, you know, Trump's kind of nonsensical statements about women or migrants.
Yeah.
No,
strip that away.
Yeah,
basically.
that noise. Just, you know, stop listening to the noise. Stop reading headlines. I mean, designed to trigger you. Yeah. And you maybe start to see what Trump is actually trying to do.
Despite my demeanor, I do take stock every year in terms of how I have carried myself throughout the year, being reflective of what has transpired, how I can make things better, the things that I've missed out on, the things that I have not spotted, for instance. Do you do these kind of reflections?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I did them more systematically. I wish I did them with more
But that's who
depth.
you are. You're rather...
yeah, kind of scattered.
Yeah.
Okay, but I do think that it's important, and I think if we come back to the question of Trump, I think I also want to get away from precisely the things I criticize other people for, to be easily triggered, to read. To mistake the headlines for the reality, to see surface phenomena.
So
rather
you apply
than
that level
dynamics.
of skepticism, but in good faith, basically. So
Well, I think we have to keep an open mind, right? So, I mean, I have my position, in the sense that I have my own political values, but I do think that those values need to be challenged. And then we live in a time where it's deeply challenged by global events. I don't know if anybody still believes in God. I don't, and I don't think anything of the last couple of years or the last 15 months suggests that there is a God out there. But anyway, the more important thing is for me, when I think about human politics or the politics of human society, is to think, what is it that is driving people, right? What are the passions? What are their fears? And I think today there are a lot of fears. I think, we all have fears. I have fears myself. And so I'm trying to kind of manage that. So if you want on a personal note, that is maybe some of the reflection I'm trying to do, develop new habits, cast off old habits, that kind of thing. But yeah, of course.
But domestically, are you happy? So I'm going to do a pollster here. But are you happy of where the country's headed? Do you feel that, especially because the show is titled The Economy, quite frankly, do you feel that the country is heading in the right direction in terms of the economy? Or do you feel that it is in the wrong direction? If you are given that choice, I know you hate these kind of things, binary, are we heading in the right direction, wrong direction?
Well, I think one thing, before I answer that question,
everything is nuanced with you.
Okay, no, there's stability. So we have a modicum of political stability in the country that we lacked over the last 4 years. We see politicians maybe not as evolved as they should be. The same old scripts trotted out by all and sundry. We know who that rogues gallery is on that score. But I think more importantly is that the government is attempting to chart a plan, though I think we sometimes forget that it's not just government. I mean, Malaysia is too open an economy to be thinking just about national policies, right? It as a way of trying to negotiate, but the sea is not in our control. Yeah. And so global events are going to be really important to look out for, and then Trump and potential trade war between China. though people have been saying that, in fact, some of the paradoxical consequences of the trade war might be of benefit to Malaysia, right? So paradoxically, Malaysia might benefit from a trade war. So okay, so I think there's all that. I think I'm not unhappy. I would like to see a greater commitment to certain of the reform agenda that the government had, at least the Pakatan Harapan component of government had. And I would like to see the older parties like UMNO reconstitute themselves. I mean, you know, we see in the UMNO youth chief, a very young man reading a very old script, a bit sad. Maybe, you know, renewal takes longer than we expect. But I do think that like, interesting developments in Malaysia. I look at Sarawak. I'm very interested in what Sarawak is doing. I mean, for me, that's has been the biggest story this year, and I think will be the biggest story next year because of Sarawak's ambition. I don't know how they're going to realize all their plans, but they're ambitious. They have a positive story.
It all boils down to Abang Joe.
Yes, and I think the Sarawak population, I mean, they want something more. The Federation is under pressure, maybe in a good way, if Anwar and his team can reimagine the Federation in a way that will make Sabahan Sarawakians happier. I think that would be good. Ignoring their grievances is a bad idea. And I think that we're on our way to maybe a healthier federation if everybody is thoughtful about it. So yeah, I don't think we're really in a bad place, not at all.
So where do people find you these days? I mean, of course,
BFM.
Yeah, so let's.
I'm on the evening show,
which is a different flavor to where you were in the first stint. So you did a Trump as well, I suppose. Yeah, you went in and then you left and then you went in again, but this time around a different creature.
Yeah. So it's an evening show. It's
hang on, before you go into that, we were working together, Sharad and I, 2014, 2015. That was in the morning run. That was a lot of fun, if you ask me, along with our good friend Melissa Idris, and it was very business, very with sprinkles of politics.
I used to listen to watch Bloomberg every day.
Oh yeah, there you go. So so you're in the evening edition. People are driving home. Of course, this is of course if you are onto linear these days. I presume everybody's on demand on podcast anyway. So yes, how has the evening edition been treating you?
Well, they treat me very well. I mean, BFM treats me very well, as Awani did. But I think more importantly is that, you know, because we do these days when we have talkback, meaning we, you know, and in fact, every day is a kind of talkback day. We invite calls and messages and voice notes. You get a sense of where at least some segment of Malaysian society is going in terms of where their outlook, their philosophical outlook, their political outlook. It's sometimes shocking, sometimes despairing, sometimes heartwarming, and you know, you feel that
basically the tapestry of society.
Yeah, but you know, people can be quite. I've heard the whole range, right? People deeply compassionate to absolutely inhumane in their thinking about groups, others, you know, migrants, marginalized groups.
Yeah.
So so I think what I do appreciate in listening to all these voices is I get a sense of how complex people are out there, that we think it's just the message. It's often more than just the message. It's the reception of it, the frameworks. And this is why, coming back to Trump, people hear Trump might say one thing and two groups will have very different interpretations of what he said. But because in America it's gotten so polarized. The question is whether in Malaysia we have also in a similar situation, that we have our silos, right? And so
Do you think that's the case?
Yes, I think so.
I mean, you're suspicious of the case right now, but
I think so. I think that we have fewer people building bridges. Too many of our politicians benefit from divisiveness. I mean, Dr. Mahathir, I think, is quite divisive. Akmal, what's his name? Dr. Akmal.
Dr. Akmal, the pemuda.
Yeah, you know, he's quite divisive. His rhetoric's always that way. The culture wars that we have here. So if we can find, and which is why I must say I appreciate Anwar. I think Anwar's a much less divisive character. His tendency not to be. I mean, he gets attacked by all sides, but you know, he's much less divisive as I think as a person. I mean, maybe you can argue that he's been going after the super rich or whatever he calls the ultra rich. But apart from that, Mahakaya and all those kinds of things. But I think generally he's of that disposition, much more, you know. But is enough being done? I don't know. You know, I ask you, I mean, do you think the country is being torn apart in the way that, say for instance, you know, today they talk about the US in terms of kind of gender divide, that young women have moved liberal and young men have moved conservative. And this whole, you know, bro culture.
No, I saw this trend just after COVID in the US, where people are talking about gender and men and how men are growing more lonely in America, how single women keeps on moving towards the left. And it became such a trend back in 2021, 2022. These days, a lot of content is being created specifically designed to talk about gender roles, gender nuances, and so on, and the attributions of their gender roles to their communities. So much so that it's holding mainstream in terms of some of the, I guess, podcasts and content creators. I am now seeing that trend that I saw in America in 2021. I'm seeing that this year here in this part of the world, where the role of man and the role of women and so on.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the flavor that needs to be talked about. Because I'm single, I am on dating apps, and it's not easy because it's true, the algorithm is as such where it is favoring the small number of men. So there is this thing called hypergamy. So I don't know whether I want to say this, but
yes,
tens and sevens and sixes and fives and twos and ones are going after the nines and tens of men. And then the ones of men, the fives, the sevens of, I'm not getting the pull at all.
So, yeah, so the question is, okay, I mean, that's an interesting dynamic. I was reflecting slightly different, the ways in which, you know, men are being pulled towards models like Andrew Tate. And so I know that Andrew Tate like,
yes.
wannabes in Malaysia.
Yes. I can name a few top of my head, but
yes. And then you know, they might mix a bit of religion in that, but the idea is that this masculinistic, you know, is
toxic masculinity. If you ask me.
Yeah. So that's the label that, say, liberals might give of that.
I am a liberal.
Yes, and so am I. And I think the problem is that the response to it often is, again, similar to the way in which we respond to Trump, is to mock it, to deride it, to dismiss it.
In fact, to affix labels on it, I suppose.
And that isn't helpful, because that's exactly what drives those kind of young men towards Andrew Tate, because they find that nobody wants to listen to them. There's no empathy on this other side. The other side is very dogmatic. It's given to cancelling people at the drop of a hat. They're not really interested in engaging. You either sign on or you're outside this club. And so what happens when people are outside the club? They go and form their own club.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that if we can avoid that, if our politics, you know, if the differences between, you know, secularists and liberals in Malaysia versus, you know, conservatives, religious conservatives are bridged, and there's a bit more empathy. We don't demonize the green states, and we, you know, as liberals, or the green states don't demonize liberals, which is something they do, of course. Then maybe the country has a better chance of going forward, I think.
You know, as you age, you become more wiser and less critical. I like you better nowadays. Yeah.
Less hypercritical, maybe.
Less hypercritical, and a lot more empathic.
Yeah. I think one, yes, maybe, you know,
it comes with age, what to do.
Yeah, I like the idea that I'm growing, even at my advanced age.
So you're growing laterally, is that what you
that's something I'm trying to fix. I did go for a swim this morning.
That was Sharat Kutan. If you want to hear more of him, you can't get enough of him at BFM radio. But for now, this is me signing off. If you want to learn more about some of our programs, just head on to astroawani.com for more information there. Until then, thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.